Hey everybody, this is Leah Bohr, and I will be doing my student presentation on special education. Some of the main ideas I want to talk about are the IDEA, needs and services, MTSS, PBIS, and RTI practices, and also IEPs. So, IDEA was a federal law that was created that guarantees special education services to all students with disabilities. It aligns a lot with the No Child Left Behind laws that were created in 2004. So they really go hand in hand with providing special services for those that need them, and also so we are not leaving any children behind, trying to fill those gaps. And then also just the fact that students have rights to special education. It's not a privilege, but it's something that is guaranteed and a right for them. Some main ideas for needs and services. I think that it's really important that we understand that special education is full of changing services. Services for students are going to be changing constantly with new technologies, with new disabilities that are found. So we really need to understand that that's a constantly changing thing, and you have to keep up with it in order to be productive. Also, the laws with special education. We are going to see amendments, we're going to see big changes in these laws. So being able to stay well informed is very important, and then have staff that really know what they're doing. And as a principal, you're going to be in charge of hiring those staff members that are going to be working with special education students and that are going to be managing them. So it's important that we have really good staff members that know what they're talking about, and that we as staff members understand the changes in laws that are happening. Also, we should all be aware of the services that are offered in our building. Whether you're a teacher or a principal, it's really important to understand what you can offer for your students. You don't want to say to a student that you can offer them something that your school building doesn't have. MTSS is a multi-tiered system of support where the first tier is going to be a whole class support. The second tier is when you are going to be grouping students and then working with a small group on an intervention. So just really heavy into working with a smaller subset of students. Then tier 3 is going to be that intensive individual support where you're just working with one student. This also has the IEP will come into play, because you're really focusing on that one student and what types of support that are going to best help them be successful. Originally, this was known as RTI, but it grew from efforts to improve identification in special education. So the MTSS has really helped see the difference between students that have special needs and also students that have just not had good instruction. So this system is really looking to help boost students before they would ever need to qualify for special education. These are things that we want to do in the classroom to help support these students. Maybe just because they are having a gap from their instruction in the past. PBSI and RTI I kind of lump together because they really go under this umbrella of MTSS. PBSI is going to be that positive behavior support initiative. And I really think that it's important when we're talking about student behavior, because we have to welcome them back into our classroom in order to build that relationship that may have been broken, especially if students are getting sent out or feeling that they are unwanted in the classroom. And then RTI is that response to intervention, which is the original, basically, MTSS, where we are responding and intervening before either things get worse, or responding and intervening so that we can boost this student's success. It's important to recognize the inequality even with students with disabilities. If you think back to the executive summary that we read, we learned that students of color with disabilities were disciplined at higher rates than students that just had disabilities or students without disabilities that were not of color. And then we have to really focus. This is all just to support students in our classroom. So these different approaches all go back to how can we support those students in our classroom. IEPs are individualized education plans. I think it's really important that regular education staff understand how to read an IEP and know what are the key points that we need to be taking away from them. Also, I think that regular education staff need to know how to put an IEP into action. It's one thing to have an IEP on your desk, it's another thing to actually use it and be able to use it effectively and efficiently with students. Also, staff members need to be willing to use different strategies and make appropriate accommodations. Fair is not always equal is very true. Sometimes you have to make accommodations that are not going to look the same on every student's paper, but it's fair for that student because that's what they need in order to be successful. I am at Grand Island Senior High, so I wanted to give you a little bit of statistics. We have over 400 special education students that we serve, and we have several different ways that we serve them. So we have inclusion in the regular ed classroom. So those are just going to be possibly IEP or 504 students that are just within the general population. Then we have interventions or pullouts throughout the day where students may go to a different reading class, or they may just be pulled out for a one-on-one with their caseworker or so forth. We also have DLP classes, which are developmental learning programs. These are going to be classes that have adapted instruction. So they're still science class or history class, but they're adapted to the specific students that are in them. Then we also have CBI, which is our community-based instruction. These are going to be special education classes that focus more on teaching community skills and life skills to students that can go off then and live on their own possibly, or have a job and be able to manage that. So going on to routines and how this is affecting my school, I kind of wanted to touch on the unfortunate reality, as I like to call it. I think a lot of the times we are relying on others, assuming the case manager will do the work, or maybe the case manager has too many students and can't reach each student, or being upset if the case managers are coming into our classrooms. I think that this is probably what the reality looks like. However, I think that it's still something we can change as a culture. Some of the practices, what needs to happen next, we need to have these strategies to include all learners. So you can't use one strategy all the time and expect every student to understand and get it. We really need to use different strategies that are including different learners at different points so we can make sure that we are having an equitable classroom. Systems need to be in place to make sure the right steps are taken every time with every student. This is why we use systems like the MTSS. It needs to be a clear-cut system that I take this step no matter who the student is every time. Then creating like adapted worksheets and tests needs to be more on the main front. That should always happen. When we create a test, we should always have our adapted versions for our IEP students or EL students. Also, I thought good practices would be grouping homogeneously and also heterogeneously. And I thought this would be great because if it's a hetero group, it could really allow for peer tutoring. Or for if it's a homogeneous group, then the teacher could work with just that group while the others go about finishing the work. And then also using data to place students in groups. We really use the MAPS data quite a bit to group our students and to create, peer tutoring sections and such. So I thought that using data is pretty good practice that we do currently. I think traditions wise, sometimes hindering our culture. I feel that the IEPs traditionally not very highly regarded here sometimes, and I think they're not used correctly, probably 50% of the time. And I feel that some people even think that, oh, well, looking at those is someone else's job, when in reality, we all need to be looking at them. The caseworker, the teacher, the parent, we all need to be involved with this IEP and how to use it and what we need to do. And legally, we need to be providing these accommodations. One of the other things I felt with the culture, I think changing the culture is going to be something we need to push for. So, teacher understanding, staff have to understand that students have the right to learn and they need accommodations to do so. That's their right. We owe it to them to make those accommodations so that they can get the learning just as well as anybody else in our class. Creating positive culture for co-teaching. I really enjoy when my special education teachers will come into my regular ed classrooms and we can co-teach and kind of work together. I think that should be more on the forefront, and we should be doing that more because it really helps those students see that it's a collaboration and that in life we collaborate to work together. And then schools must use equity when working with all students, not just those who may qualify for special education service, but for all students. We really need to use that equity piece and be giving all students what they need in order to be successful, in order to learn. Here are my references. I used several from a class I have taken before on special education, and I actually would love to show you the video of them, but I can't remember how to turn the webcam on. Oh, they're perfect. So I actually really love these books, and I just wanted to touch on them real quick. This Lucky Number 7 has a lot of great information, and it's really thin and easy to just pull off your shelf real quick. And then I read this book this summer, and it really opened my eyes to the things I need to change and accommodations and how important they are. So that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for learning more about special education.